Just two-story houses built by Stanford for its coaching staff 7 years before. We'd brought each of our two children home from Stanford's Children's Hospital after they'd been born, and now they were enrolled in a terrific on-campus daycare center a few blocks from our house. Our fellow coaches were our neighbors and friends. We went to each other's competitions, cheered each other's successes, and celebrated holidays and birthdays together. Molly and I loved the community and life we'd built here. Now, part of your job, Mr. Vandemoer, is recruiting athletes for the sailing team. Is that correct? That's right. Would you walk us through that a little? How recruiting works at Stanford? I started in on the basics, that academics were the primary consideration, that there were no scholarships in college sailing, and that my sport wasn't part of the National Collegiate Athletic Association, NCAA, so I wasn't under those constraints. I told them that Stanford admissions allotted me 6 or 7 slots for recruited sailors each year, provided those students met the school's stringent academic standards. Agent Keating took notes while I spoke. The FBI agent asked me about application timelines and test scores and GPAs, often referring to the paper in front of her as if she were reading from a script. They were the kinds of questions I'd answered happily hundreds of times at college nights and high school regattas during my 11 years at Stanford, and before that as head coach at the U.S. Naval Academy in Maryland. Recruiting was one of my favorite parts of the job. I knew a lot of coaches who dreaded it, but I liked interacting with young athletes, learning what their strengths were, and figuring out where they might fit on the team. What I didn't enjoy was having to tell kids no. But I prided myself on being honest if I didn't see a spot for them. I never wanted to give anyone false hope. And when you find a student you want, what do you do? She asked, turning to the next page in her packet. I take their academic information to the admissions office. They're only looking at grades and test scores at that point, just the feasibility of them getting in. And this happens when? July and August, mostly. I do it then because the Ivies can't offer kids anything until September 1st. I try to, beat them to the punch. Makes sense, she said, giving me a fleeting smile. I smiled back. Agent Keating didn't look up. And if they have the appropriate grades and scores, what happens then? Then admissions might give me a pink envelope to send to them, I said. Pink envelope? Pink envelopes are what Stanford calls early application packets that are just for recruited athletes. I told them that Stanford usually offered me about a dozen pink envelopes for potential recruits. Receiving that application didn't guarantee the school would accept the kids, and it wasn't a promise that I'd ultimately use one of my admissions slots on them. It just meant they were over the first hurdle in the recruiting process. Sometimes the high school students who received the pink envelopes decided not to apply to Stanford. But if they did fill out the application, those bright pink envelopes went into a special pile and got an early read from admissions officers. And this gives them a leg up on regular applicants? To a certain extent, yes, because they've already been vetted. Admissions wouldn't offer a pink envelope to them unless they had a very good shot at getting in. And do you know how many of your recruits get in? My acceptance rate is about 80%, I said. And the usual Stanford acceptance rate? It's less than 5%. She looked up at me, tilted her head, and narrowed her eyes. Okay, so your support does help a great deal. I detected a hint of disapproval in her voice. I shifted in my seat. Upstairs, I could hear Nicholas repeatedly asking Molly who Daddy was talking to. Nora had started to cry. I felt terrible that Molly had to deal with the kids by herself. I glanced at my watch. It was almost 8 a.m. We both had to get to work. Can you tell me what this is about? I asked. I knew a big NCAA basketball scandal had blown up recently. Recruiting rules had been violated. Coaches had been fired. Shoe company executives had been caught bribing athletes. It had been all over the national news. I thought they might be gathering background information for that case. getting